Okay, hi everyone. Well, let's do another FRQ. And I'm going to do the SongList FRQ today. And notably, with FRQs, you'll be writing them on paper. In this example, I'm going to just do mine in the Code.hs window that I'm using, just because it's easier to type. I could probably do it in Notepad. I'm choosing to do it there. But what I want to say is, these FRQs, they have a number of points which will be similar. The more you do of these questions, the better chances you have of seeing something that you recognize. And hopefully you'll recognize some things the more you see my videos. So here, what I've done is I've taken the question. Now the question today is to do with this one. I probably should go there first. So that's my code I've written. I'm going to look at the question first. Let's run through it. This question is saying we have a music website, and I might be changing my font size here just to prepare a little better for those of you who can't see that well. So a music website keeps track of downloaded music. For each download, the site uses a download info object to store a song's title and number of times it's been downloaded. And what you can see here is a download info object. Now, what you'll notice is that it doesn't really show any of the variables. It doesn't really show what's happening inside any of the functions. It's only showing you the signatures of the functions, or the methods. It shows you the constructor, how you make the object. Then it also shows you the get title and increment times downloaded, with an explanation here in the comments of what it's doing, which is increment the times downloaded by 1. So it's not really showing you all the information. Now, why do they do that? Well, one, they don't want to confuse you. And you say, well, that's insulting, I won't be confused. It's mainly to show you that you don't need a bunch of information from this class. All you need to focus on is what methods have I got, and what is the return type of those methods. So in this case, we got get title will just give us the string of what the title is. So we can grab the title. We don't need to know what the variables are. Just rely on this method to give you the title. This method here doesn't return anything. It's void, and it will just increment the times downloaded. So it'll add another time that this song's been downloaded, right? The next class is the music downloads class. Now, a common feature of these FRQs is to use a class that we've just looked at and then put a bunch of objects of that class into an array list or even an array. And we'll keep a list of those things there. And so your job will be to run through that list and use one of the methods from that class to access a piece of information. So you can probably bet that that's what we're going to be doing soon. Let me zoom back here and let's read the question. So this is the music downloads object. We can look at the class. So we have an array list of download info objects, right? And it's saved as a list and download list. So a list is just like a superclass for the array list object. You needn't worry too much about that. We're going to still use the same methods. So now we have a constructor here, and all this does is set up the array list. So here is where we declare the array list. In the constructor is where we initialize the array list. So we're giving it some new memory space. We're saying what kind of list it is. And so you see here, even though we've declared it as a list, you can see the object is actually the array list. So don't get confused by that. It's just the superclass declaration, but the array list specialized class is the actual object. Now, what else have we got to work with? Well, we have a get download info, which will return a download info object based on this title, right? So we get the title here, and we return the download info object that matches that title. Okay, that's part A, it says here. Okay, so like I said, we're going to go through the list and find something in the list and then return it. So we're returning the download info object. And let's see, what else we got here? So here's some, I guess, important things to note. These, I have skipped over them in looking through this, but they will be necessary to look through because it does give you details about how the function is meant to work. And as we have to write this soon, you'll need to know. So it's notable that no duplicate titles are in download list, so we don't have duplicates, and no entries were removed. Okay, so this method is called update downloads, which takes a list of strings, right, called titles, and we're going to do something with that. I'm guessing, my guess here is we probably will be asked to create one of these objects from this class by using the constructor, and we'll have to add it to the list. So as you see, we'll get the title, each title. For each of those titles, we'll make an object and put it in the download info list, or the get downloads list, right? So this is the general structure. You'll notice that these FRQs change, but a lot of them are the same, and that's why I'm saying what I'm expecting it will do. Let's look at the question more specifically. Okay, so what I've said just now so far is pretty much background knowledge for doing the FRQs. Now we're going to get into what exactly we're asking to do. So it says write this get download info, which returns a reference to the download info object if an object with a title that matches the parameter exists. Okay, if there is no song, the method returns null. Okay, so keep that in mind. Null is just a pointer to nothing. For example, suppose we have, okay, so we have variable web music A refers to an instance of music downloads, okay, and then the table below represents the download list, so that's our download list. Okay, we have Hey Jude, Soul Sister, Aqualung, downloaded 10 times, downloaded 3 times, downloaded 5 times. When we call get music A, get download info Aqualung, it returns a reference to the object at position 2. Okay, so we're basically sending back the download object. Okay, alrighty. Now, as we can see, so now's the time to turn to the get download info page. So here I'm going to write my answer. I've copied these titles down there. So this is just from the question that I've added. So our job is to write part A here. We are going to return an object like this, which matches the title here. So let's get to it. So what do I need to use? So here's the question is, I have a list of downloads here. I'll need to run through that list and check to see if any of those titles match this title. So for each music download in the list, I need to use one of the methods here. Which one? Well, I'd probably be using getTitle. As you see here, that's going to return the title. So all I need to do here is to run through my array list. So let's go. Eventually, I'm going to return the download info object. So maybe I can make one, a pointer to that, download info, and I'm just going to call it D. Okay, I'm going to use it later, but for now I'll just save it. That's the return value. Eventually I'm going to return D. Okay, in between I have to get a value for D. So let's write a for loop. For int I equals 0, I less than, now what, my download list dot size, -1. No, not -1. And I++. Standard for loop to run through the list. All right, next part. So what I'm going to do next, I'm going to do my test. Now I'm going to check. I have to check each of these downloads and to check to see if that title matches, right? So what I need is now a condition. I'm going to be searching every single item in that list, and to do that, I'm going to need to be writing an if statement, right? So that I'm going to access the individual item by the index I, and I'm going to maybe check to see that item if it matches the title, right? So these are the things that I'm going to be doing to try and see if I can get a match. So let's see. Now, many people like to combine this all together. I tend to like to separate things out. So I'm going to have a, let's say a string here called T, and I'm going to call it DT because download title, because it's from my download list title. So maybe DLT. And that's going to equal, all right, so I'm going to do download list dot get and the index I, right? And then now I've accessed the individual item in that list at position I. And within that item, now I have a download info object. I need to access the title, right? I've only got the object so far. So I need to use the method in that download info object. I need to use the method get title. So I'm going to grab the title by using that method. So now I've saved that in DLT, right? So I've separated it out. Like I could have put that all in the if statement, but I like to keep it clean. And now if DLT, which is the string of the title, dot equals the title that I'm looking for. So this is the title I'm looking for, and this is the so I'm matching this title with the one in the list. If they match, then I can say D equals DLT. D equals download list dot get I. Yeah. Now, actually, what I realized as I was just talking there is that I don't really need to be going through any more of the list. Once I've found a match, I know from the question that there is only really one match in the list. So I'm going to just go ahead and erase that return value. I think it's unnecessary. And what I am going to do is erase that one too. Don't need that one either. And so instead of like D equals, I'm just going to say return download list get I. Okay, and that'll end the loop, that'll end the method, and we'll be done. Now, what happens if I don't find anything? So if I finish this for loop and I hadn't found anything, it told me that I need to return null. That was in the question. So this null, if you're not familiar with it, null is basically saying it's a pointer. Well, it's like saying no object, right? Instead of saying, I can't say 0 because 0 is a number, I say null means it's nothing, right? So basically I'm returning pointing to nothing. So here we are, we've done part A, okay? And that's a pretty good answer. Now, where will the points come? All right, so let's say that part A was worth, 4 or 5 points. Where might you get the points from? Well, first of all, you'll be getting a point for doing your for loop properly, right? No boundary errors, no starting at 1 or going too far or going too few, right? Making sure that for loop is okay. The second thing you'll get points for is maybe accessing the right area of the download list. So getting the right object. The second would be using the getTitle method properly, right? So there's another point there. Did I use getTitle? Even if you did your for loop and you messed up your for loop, you still might get a point for using the getTitle, okay? It would be better to do it the right way, but there's chances there. Then you would do some condition test and that would get you another point, right? Especially using the equals. If you did DLT like equals title, you might lose a point for that because strings can't be compared that way. Okay, so, and finally returning the right answer, the right object, that will get you another point. So here, I probably quoted about 5 or 6 points, I think, in that question. So that's pretty significant, right? All the different areas where you can get points. Let's read part B. Okay, next part B. Write the music downloads method update downloads, which takes us a list of song titles. For each title, the method updates the download list either by incrementing the download count, if that title exists, or adding a new object with that title. And am I getting logged out here? If that's logging me out, then I will just continue. So we're updating the number, or we are going to be adding that object. So adding a new download info object. So we're given a list of titles here. We need to go through that whole list of titles, and for each one, we're going to process it, right? So let's start by another for loop, okay? We can do the same one that we did last time, int I, but this time we're doing I is less than, and now we have titles dot size and I++, right? So this is basically saying for each title in the list, do something. All right, that's what we're doing here. This is our basic loop. This is going to encompass all of what we need to do. Now, obviously, we're going to look for that title in the download info list, right? And I would think that we'd probably use this method here that we wrote in part A, right? Don't need to rewrite. Don't invent the wheel again. You just use what we've done previously, right? And I'm sure that if without having to log in again, let me say this: you've just written it. Assume that it works. So even if you're not confident on your answer to part A, you should use part A as though it does work. Okay, and by that I mean look at it like I'm going to use this name, like the name of this method. I'm going to give it this input, and it's going to give me the right download info object as a result. So that's all you need to assume, right? Don't worry about all this stuff inside. Let's in fact hide it. All you need to worry about now is what is there. Okay, so answer to part A. And usually a lot of these FRQs are like this, right? We're using what we've done previously in order to answer the next question. Right, so let's go ahead and we want to check firstly if we do get a result from that title. Because if the title matches, then we know we're going to get the download info object. If we don't get it, then what it's going to give us, remember it's going to give us null. Right? Remember the return value here was going to be null if we couldn't find that download info object. So first up, let's just save whatever the result is, right? So I'm going to take a download. I'm expecting to get a download info object, and I'll just call it D. And it should equal get download info. I'm using the part A answer with the title. Okay, so I'm taking the title in this for loop. Okay, so it's going to be titles and then .get whatever counter we're up to. And that's going to return me either a download info object or null. So I should do a test, right? If D equals null, now I've got a special case. I need to go and create a DL info object and add it to the list. If that's the case, okay. So if that's the case, I'll do that. And if it's not the case, then I'm going to update that object with a value. Like I'm going to use that increment thing that we had before. Let's have a look here. Increment times downloaded, right? So it's been downloaded one more time. So I'm going to use this method, just run it once, and then that will increment the times downloaded. So here we go. That one's the easy one. I'm going to take that object, D, and I'm going to say increment times downloaded. Okay, done. So that part was easy. Creating the object. Okay, so this is the maybe trickier part, or not really that tricky. Let's make a new object, download info. Okay, so now I'm going to make a new object. I've already got, so if D equals null, okay, so let's actually update D. So instead of, like, I'm just going to reuse D and then say new download info. Okay, so I'm making a new object. Now let's see, let's look at the constructor. How do I make one? I just need the string title, and I'm going to make one. Easy. So let's take that title. Okay, so title I know is titles, and .get I, because that's where I'm at. So that's the title, and now I've made a new download info object. So now D is pointing, so instead of D pointing to null now, D is now pointing to a new download info object using this title. So all you need to do now is to add that title to the list, right? So we just go ahead now and do an add. So my download list. Okay. So what I'm doing here is adding that object now to the end of the download list. Okay. So you're really just adding that in, and as far as I can see, that's all we need to do. There is no return value for this one. Okay. So pretty much that is the full answer to do that. If it's a null, we've made a new object, we've added it to the list. And if it's not, then we're going to increment that object with times downloaded. Right? So there we go. There we have it. Two answers. Now, not too much, not too complicated. Just obviously for loops are super useful. But knowing your way to access the different, basically you have in these FRQs, you have one class which has got a bunch of methods which you'll need to access and use, and another class which will store a bunch of those objects, and you'll have to access the list, right? Go through that list, access each object, and use its methods to find its information, right? This is really what it comes down to. This is like 80% of these FRQs are similar to this kind of question, okay? So once you get that practice in and you sort of get used to this, it'll be much easier. So, hope that's been helpful. That was SongList FRQ. I will be back with more FRQs at a later date.